Boom. All right, I'm actually a bit nervous now because you shouldn't have told me that you did videography and photography before the podcast.
Like no judgment whatsoever. You know,
This is the most amateur thing you can ever see. Now I'm going to be heaps mindful of the audio. But thank you for coming on. This was really impromptu. It was a quick turnaround. So I had on a guy called Ravi Hammond, who is an AI engineer.
Yeah.
And he was telling me I needed to get LinkedIn to find guests.
Yeah.
And within the first 2 days, we started talking. I was like, oh, this is cool. So if you just want to tell everyone a bit about yourself and what you do, that'd be good.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like you said, we caught up on LinkedIn. You said you've got a mate that's in game dev and you wanted to chat to some game developers. So here I am. Adelaide's a very small place. We all know each other, so it's pretty easy, right? So I've got a bit of a background in media, like I said, and doing videography and stuff like that as a bit of a hustle. But then, it's finally become a time when game development is actually viable. And that's sort of always been my first love. So now I've turned around and I'm back on that. So sort of using all the skills that I've built up over the years in media and all that kind of thing and trying to incorporate it into game design. So.
But what was was it always going to be VR you were going to tackle?
No, VR wasn't a thing, right? This all happened around 2013, 2014 was when the original Oculus developer kit came out. So the DK1, a friend of mine had it, strapped a weird box-shaped screen to my head, and I went, oh, this is next level. This is different, right? Like now we're doing video games where it's completely immersive.
Oh, he put me on. He brought. Actually, one sec. Let me just turn this off because it sounds like a plane. When you got the headphones in, it doesn't bleed through on the audio, but it just sounds bad when you're talking.
Oh, it's a fan, is it?
No, it's the fridge.
Oh, the fridge.
Yeah, it doesn't bleed through on the audio like for the guest.
Right,
when we're talking, it sounds horrible.
Yeah.
So he brought over was it Oculus?
That was the Quest 3.
Quest 3.
Yeah.
And I haven't worn a VR headset since the PlayStation 4 original VR. It's not even the same thing anymore.
It's come a long way.
Like when I put it on when that first happened, that little alien thing you put on for me.
Yeah.
I was getting like goosebumps a bit. Like it's actually crazy.
Yeah. That's your first mixed reality experience.
Oh, it was insane. It's just how good it can read the room.
Yeah.
And even that screen. That screen alone, just where you can, like your hub where you can watch movies and stuff and browse, it's so intuitive and like just snappy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. So yeah, just that only came out late last year. There's been a bump in resolution, bump in processing and things like that. So it is still a mobile processor, but they're just getting faster and faster every year that now we're getting around, like I'd call it like a PS3, PS4 level of capacity, like on the headset now. So we can play games that have more polygons and they've got more shaders, they get more exciting things. And now we've got that new depth sensor and color pass through. Now developers are having a lot of fun with like bringing your room and bringing your space into the game, right? And so that's what you experience. Is it scans the room, it creates geometry, it knows where you are, it knows where everything in your room is, and then now you can have aliens busting through your walls and ceiling. And
then we put on your game.
Yes.
And that was... I'm glad you brought it because we were talking off camera, I wouldn't have understood as much.
It's like the Matrix.
Oh, man.
I can talk to you about it all day. You have to see it for yourself.
It's honestly like jumping. It's a very simple premise. Everyone's played that game when they were a kid, like just trying to stay alive and dodging and weaving.
Yeah.
But playing it in that, it's just so odd. It feels like the future, like when you see things in movies and they strap on a headset and they're just in like a different world. It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, and I'm cheating a lot, really. Like, I feel like the absolute killer app for my game is the fact you play it on an exercise bike, right? That's the little trigger that takes it from like, oh yeah, cool, like there's cars coming at you and whatever, I'm on a highway, but because your body's now involved in it, and as you start to pedal, the bike starts to move, and then your brain goes, oh, this is the same thing. Yeah, like I'm controlling this, I'm in this world now. And which is funny because you would think that getting people speeding down a highway, dodging cars at breakneck speeds would make people freak out or make people have motion sickness or anything like that.
It's a roller coaster. Like, I had this. You get this kind of gut drop when you're going down and up, which is so cool because it's very reminiscent to a roller coaster.
All my favorite reactions are people going up or down the ramps.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the name?
So Pedal Rebel VR is my game that I'm working on. It's just been my solo little hobby project, but it's starting to outgrow that now, which is really cool. And so I'm going around, I'm showing everybody the game, getting as much feedback as possible, and I've applied for Screen Australia grant. So fingers crossed we might get funded. But if not, then it's just going to be a slow process of releasing a demo and reaching out to social media and things like that to get people to try the game and
people
support the development.
People will be able to try it at a Sage, is it?
Yeah, so we've got Sage coming up on the 16th and 17th at the SAFC Studios. It's a free event. Anybody can show up, and the good thing is it's going to showcase all of the good, all of the good, all of our local game devs. All of the awesome games that people are making here in Adelaide.
We got some crazy games. I didn't even realise that the people who made Hollow Knight are from Adelaide.
Yeah.
Cherry Studios, is it? Cherry?
Team Cherry, yeah.
Team Cherry?
Yeah, awesome game. Absolutely global hit.
It's like one of the best indie games of all time in a lot of people's eyes. If you haven't played it, a lot of people won't know what it is probably that watch this because you have to probably be into indie game. Not even actually, it transcended indie games a bit because it went pretty mainstream.
Yeah.
But for that to come out of Adelaide's huge.
Oh, it's massive. And that's crazy. And there's been a few other little kind of underground and cult hits here and there coming out of Adelaide. But Australia itself is punching way above their weight when it comes to indie games right now. Untitled Goose Game. It's a massive
Is that
hit.
from Australia?
That's from House in
Really?
Melbourne. Yeah. There's been, and there's too many to mention, but there are so many amazing games coming out of Melbourne, coming out of Australia right now. And it's literally an indie boom, and it's happening. So we went last year to GCAP, which is a big sort of game dev industry event, but it's a big lot of networking and stuff happening there. And we met a bunch of devs from all over, and even like massive publishers and like platform holders and stuff like that there to really kind of get a grasp of what's happening in the indie scene in Australia, and it's booming. It's massive. So we've had AAA developers pull out of Australia multiple times, and the industry's kind of been up and down. But there's just such a strong groundswell of indie devs that are out there making their own thing and having different levels of success, but by just doing it themselves, doing it indie but selling to a global market. Australia is perfect for that. So it's growing, it's booming. Now the government's involved trying to help prop up that market and help people get their foot in the door, get their first release out there, and then start to get the eye of publishers or just doing it themselves. So they've just opened up these new grant programs and offset programs so that there's one for like low level, like you've just got an idea and you don't know what you're doing. There's one where you've got a concept and you want to get it to production, which is the one I went for. And then also on the slightly larger scale is games above 500,000 get a 30% offset. So it means you can spend more money on your game, you can bring more people in, and then you get a tax offset as well. So that's very similar to film. Those kinds of offsets were really big in the 70s, and we had lots of awesome films being made in Australia because of that. And so all of that is sort of coming together where they're saying like, gaming is a huge entertainment industry now. It's bigger than Hollywood. Let's support that in Australia because we have a lot of highly talented people, highly educated, talented young kids that want to go out and make indie games. Let's support them. Let's get them to that level so that then there's that pathway, and then more and more people can get into the industry. So it's amazing.
The indie game scene at the moment is probably as big as it's ever been because people are sick of the AAA, like the AAA studios just feeding us shit every year.
Yeah, we're taking full advantage of coming out with they're leaving all of these gaps in the market.
The perfect example is Call of Duty. They have just fucking destroyed that franchise. Like they have just killed. I don't know if you keep up to date with it.
I haven't played one since Black Ops.
I have not bought a Call of Duty in maybe 6 years because it was just fucking. It just started getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the last Call of Duty was supposed to be an expansion. But instead, to money grab, they turned it into a full game.
Yeah.
And charged $100 for it. Like, it's insane. and everything's hidden behind paywalls now, and it's just you're getting a half game. Like when Cyberpunk came out, and that whole shit. Apparently, it's excellent now.
Yeah, it is awesome now.
Apparently, it's excellent now.
Took 2 years,
but like they got slated with it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So like big money has just gotten way too involved in the gaming industry, and
because corporates have taken over the gaming industry rather
exactly.
than the
It's all about
developers.
It's all about investors. It's all about the VCs getting their money back and things like that. Or it's top down management issues and things like that, or exploitation of their workforce and things like that. So like there are a lot of issues in gaming that are kind of like, they're getting the headlines and stuff a lot now, and you can see that gamers are burnt out. They know when they're being exploited. They know when when games are coming out and they're just a cash grab, and they know when people's heart isn't in it, and so they turn to indie games when you're not going to buy an indie game that's not a passion project. That's not just literally someone wearing their heart on their sleeve and saying this is a thing that I want to exist, and I'm going to do anything I can to make it that way.
And if a game's stupid, it's like they make it clear that this is supposed to be a stupid game, like Untitled Goose Game. That's it's a fucking dumb game.
Oh, it's great,
but it's excellent.
Who doesn't want to be a goose? Just like
that goat simulator game. That's excellent. It's you're just a goat.
Oh, for sure. And that's the thing. So like, and like we all grow up with games made by passionate developers, right? I mean, even the words that we shouldn't say or who should not be named, but even EA back in the day were amazing developers, right? They actually, their name made sense back in the 80s and 90s. They were electronic artists, right? Like they were making art, and we grew up with all of that. And then now it's a dirty word, right? Like you don't want to play a game that's made by EA anymore.
Even Ubisoft, they used to make.
I love Ubisoft games.
Ubisoft games are like the best fucking games from the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
And now it's just like everything's hidden behind a paywall or as a live service game. It's like, why? What the fuck is with these live service games?
Yeah, it's frustrating. And like we're maybe seeing a bit of a trend come backwards. I mean, they just released a 2D Prince of Persia game. And it's great.
Apparently, it's really
good. It's actually good. And it feels a lot like Hollow Knight in a few ways that I'm actually like, oh, they kind of took that from Hollow Knight.
I heard it's very, very good, though.
But it's good.
It's like a Metroidvania.
It is a Metroidvania, yeah. And it has features that I was like, oh, I remember this from Hollow Knight, which is hilarious. But that's that aspect of it, right? Like, there's got to be a swing back. And, big publishers, big developers do support smaller projects frequently and things like that. But yeah, it is like we're just seeing these trends in gaming happening, and corporations are going to do what corporations are going to do. They're gonna milk the money train until it's dead, and then they're going to jump off it and they're going to fund a different train.
They place such unrealistic developing times on these poor people. Like it's not a lot of the time. It's not even the developer's fault.
No, it's not.
It's because they're getting Call of Duty developers get 3 years to try and make a masterpiece. And have to make it profitable. So they have to not even make the game. They got to plan out 3 seasons of the game for DLC drops and microtransactions.
Yeah.
So all of these developers have things that they never had to worry about before. Like they weren't making microtransaction schemes in the early 2000s and shit. They just released full games.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And then you're getting these day one updates and all this kind of stuff, right? And then corporate will be trying to rush the game out and things like that. The investors need their money or whatever. And so that's, the case of a lot of games where they're broken on release. You buy a game day one, how likely are you now to have the game work properly on your computer or your console? Or are you going to connect to a server properly? Or are you not going to have these weird pop-ins and stuff like that? And it's burnout, and it's ridiculous hours. It's bad decisions made by management, poor management of their workforce and things like that. So it is a rough time for the industry because it is in this weird growth period where it is now the biggest entertainment industry in the world. But is that a good thing? It's like with the VFX industry and all these Marvel films coming out now. It means you've had an absolute explosion of how much CGI is being developed every year now.
Marvel's fucking killed the superhero movie.
Right, but also they're damaging the VFX industry as well because of how much they need to output all the time. You watch a Marvel movie and you go, this shot's amazing. And then the next shot you go, oh God, like what happened there? And it's that same thing. It's about, you know, needing a good result, but then there's money involved and then there's time limits and all this stuff. So
the Avengers to film is what Fortnite is to gaming.
yeah.
It's like Fortnite just fucking, because of people seeing how much profit can be made, they perfected that store, or like the seasons and the battle pass. Like, I don't know if they were the first people to do a battle pass.
A lot of that came from the mobile market. But what is really frustrating, right, is that we have these amazing gaming devices in our pocket all day, right? I mean, did you grow up with a Game Boy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love my Game Boy, right? And
you don't see your phone as a gaming device,
I don't see my phone as could be the most powerful Game Boy ever, right? But you go on the App Store and you're like, oh, I've got, 20 minutes or something. I want to just quickly play something. Maybe I'm waiting for an appointment or I'm on the bus or whatever, right? There's nothing that you can just pick up and play, probably because all the games that are on the App Store, they're all trying for you to
buy more shit.
Right? And that's sort of where that market collapsed in a way, where it's like, when the iPhone first came out, it's like $2.99 for a game or something like that. Then, mobile developers are like, whoa, why would I charge $2.99 for a game and then never make any more money from that one person ever when I can sell ads and I can make $2.99 once a week?
There is nothing worse than finding a good game on a phone and it's just ridden with ads.
Right.
Every step of the way there's a fucking ad. It's so annoying.
But they make way more money that way.
Yeah.
In fact, the mobile market makes more money than the entire console market.
I've never thought about that. Like, it's interesting that we all grew up with Game Boys and like everyone who had a Nokia was obsessed with Snake.
Right.
Like the most simple game ever. But we got something that has more technology than the first fucking thing that got sent to the moon. And the Apollo, it's got more technology in it than the Apollo that went to the moon, was it?
Yeah.
And we don't play any games.
No, it just turned into a TikTok infinite scroller, right? It's not a gaming console.
Yeah.
There's even if the best mobile game ever came out last week, no one would ever hear about it.
I have played a few.
Buried.
I have played a few games, but I have had to pay for them to get rid of the ads.
Yeah. But like there are some good games on mobile, but they're so difficult to find because the mobile market is just all centered around either ads or microtransactions.
Yeah.
And the problem is people buy them.
Oh, man.
The problem is people buy them.
I've got a friend who's so deep into microtransactions.
Right. And as if Australia doesn't have a big enough gambling problem as it is.
Well, it's teaching kids to gamble from a young age.
Do we need to train them from this age?
Well, I remember I was obsessed with Black Ops 3. And they had crates. I never spent money on crates, but I used to watch a lot of streamers that used to pump thousands of dollars into crates.
Yeah.
And it's just rolling the dice. It's just a pokey machine.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Those are the honest ones. Some of them actually had deals and they would get guaranteed drops and things like that.
Yeah,
and they would be invested in some of the gambling companies and things like that. There's a lot of bad stuff going on in that kind of stuff.
So when you're developing your VR game...
Segue, sure.
No, just before I forget this. When you're developing your game, do you have to develop it for a specific headset?
Yes and no.
Do you just have to tweak it a bit for every kind
Pretty much. Yeah. So the good thing is there's something called OpenXR, which sort of has compatibility for all headsets. And then it's just a difference if you want to launch for PC VR or standalone VR. So currently the Quest headsets run Android. So you need to export your game as an Android
So the
file.
Quest would be a headset one, like a standalone one.
Yeah. Sorry, we call it standalone, meaning you don't need base stations, you don't need a computer. It has cameras and all
the Oculus would be a computer one?
So the Quest is the only Oculus there is now. So there's no PC VR Oculus anymore.
So what PC?
So PC VR would be like there are other headsets. So like you've got your Vives and Indexes.
Apparently
and
the
stuff like that.
HTC Vive's really good.
Yeah. So that's there's older headset. There's multiple versions now, and they've got standalone headsets as well now. HTC do. But then you sort of either you're developing for Steam, or you're developing for standalone. But it's very easy just to do both. You just got to tweak it in the settings a little bit.
And what's the most powerful headset on the market at the moment?
Powerful?
Like, well, yeah, the getting rid of price points and shit, what's the best headset you can get?
Yeah, it's an interesting
Or is
point.
it dependent on your rig as well?
Yeah, a little bit. So there's pretty much headsets you can spend about as much as you like on, depending on what your sort of what your priorities are, right? So there's some headsets that are super high resolution, really wide field of view. Those are like the Pimax headsets, or like the Varjo headsets, but like they can start from like 2,000 to 5,000 to 10,000 if you're a military company or something like that, right?
For simulations and stuff.
Exactly. And those are super high resolution, which means you need a really good computer, really good GPU, things like that. And then other headsets are somewhere more in between, and they might just they might just be lighter, or they might just be, you know, things like that. You've got these headsets now, the Big Screen Beyond, tiny little thing that just goes over your eyes. It looks like just a pair of goggles type thing. But then that's, you know, you can't have that wireless. You have to cable that into your computer, and you still need the base station sensors to be able to see your tracking. But it's so comfortable. People wear it all day. They hang out in VR chat all day, chat with people from all over the world, and they just absolutely live inside of VR, which is kind of crazy.
VR chat's massive.
And then you've got your Quest headsets as well, that means that all the processing is on board. They have their own app store and everything like that. And then the Quest 3 would be the most powerful one of those that's just come out.
The Quest 3.
Yeah.
So with the Quest and the standalone ones, you can just download things. You connect them to the internet, and you just download things directly to it. You don't need to plug them into a computer to download things.
Everything's on board. Everything's on there. They've got their own app store. And
how many how many gigabytes is the
there's
storage?
There's a 128 and a 256. No, and I think there's a 512 model. Yeah.
And I guess the games aren't really that long, and so
They're not.
like Half-Life Alyx would probably be as big as a game gets, I imagine.
Yeah, that one's on Steam only. And then, but some of them, I think, so the Quest 3 launched with a game called Asgard's Wrath, which is sort of, that's a Meta Studio game they built in-house, very much their launch title, right? It's their Last of Us, or it's their God of War, or whatever. Like, it's that big, you know, you want this game, you want this headset, like, you got to buy our console and everything. That was like 30 gig, I think, and it actually took quite a while to download over Wi-Fi. But the good thing is, obviously, you can just uninstall it, reinstall it, and keep whatever you want on the headset. So yeah. But they have their own app store. What's really cool that Meta is doing now, when we chatted with them in Melbourne last year, it was really cool that they've got another program called App Lab, which means you can sort of put your demo and everything on their App Lab store rather than it being on their real store. Sort of like that way it's clear that it's an experiment, or that it's early access, or that it's not unfinished, and people can you can either put it up there for free and people can try it out, or you can have it as like a really low fee, so you could chuck it up for a couple of bucks or whatever, and then as you update it, you can actually update the price.
Yeah, right.
So that's kind of similar to like an early access program that people do, or like a Kickstarter type thing, or whatever.
People actually getting something out of the Kickstarter, like they can try it.
Yeah. So that's a really cool program. And before, it was like done in a way where you couldn't really search. You wouldn't come up in the search on the store or anything like that unless people were specifically looking for you, which is cool. But now, like if you search for Pedal Rebel when I'm on App Lab, then it'll actually come up, and then you can get the early version of the game. And then that's sort of like was going to be my release strategy, is that then I'll build a bit of a community that way, and then I'll do like a YouTube update, and I'll be like, okay guys, here's all the awesome stuff that's going to come out for the game, blah blah blah. Get it before this date, and you'll get all of the features going forward. And then I can update the price when I update the game, and then so the value of the game stays with the value of the development, if that makes sense. So as I add more features, I can then up the price of the game, and then when it's full price, we're done. That's super helpful for an indie developer, where you can sort of fund that mid development, if that makes sense. Like, it would be really hard if I was trying to make the entire game with no funding whatsoever. If I can sell some copies early, that's going to help me get through the middle and actually to completion, which is really cool. So
are you going to sell the equipment for the bike as well?
So I've developed the game in a way that obviously you don't need the bike. And then the idea is that but
it's a bonus.
Yeah, it's a bonus. It makes the game way better and things like that. When we did talk to Meta in Melbourne, they said they can't officially endorse any games that do have accessories, that require accessories, right? Like, and that was sort of the wording, where it's like, okay, well, you don't need an exercise bike to play the game, but it is way better. It enhances the experience. And if you want to do that, then that's on you type thing. You know what I mean? So definitely you can't make games that require additional hardware.
The
That's
bike
against
definitely does help, like with the experience. But do you know what? If funding and money was not an issue, it would be so cool to have that hooked up to like a hydraulic motorbike rig.
Oh yeah,
with like full like haptic feedback.
Yeah,
on
or
crashing and
even just
shit.
a bike that could mechanically
Like,
lean.
You remember
would
those
be-
old school bikes from the
like
arcades?
the Namco, yeah.
That would be sick.
Oh, it'd be insane. Yeah. I want to try something like that for sure.
That wouldn't be hard to figure out either, really, because it's just the leaning and the throttle. But if you could just somehow...
I mean, if someone had one of them lying in their garage right now, we could play the game on there and it would work.
Oh, if you could figure out how to hook up the throttle to it,
Yeah.
and like that would be so cool.
Yeah. So that's obviously a stretch goal, right?
Yeah.
The idea for my game was that I wanted it to work with any bike. So like there are a few apps out there where people have tried to either sell like a Peloton kind of program where like you buy the bike, you buy the subscription for the fitness program, and then all of that kind of thing. It's all techie and expensive and VC stuff. And a lot of fitness products, I don't think they don't cater for gamers. They don't. It's not appealing to gamers whatsoever, right? And like I'm not a big sports guy, and I just find the gym boring, and especially cardio. I don't engage with it whatsoever, right? And so I wanted to make something that I would want to get competitive at, that I would want to do.
I could still be on
times.
that now. If we weren't doing the podcast, I'd probably still be on it.
Right, and that's that thing. So I thought, well, and we were talking about all that mobile addiction and those toxic gambling traits that all these mobile games have in them. I thought, what if I can use the power of that, but put it towards a positive use, right? So if we were getting double XP, if you rode your bike 3 times a week, right? And then we start doing things like that. And then like, okay, cool, you did 6Ks this
You have
week.
leaderboards with your mates.
Yeah, or it's like,
that.
well, you did 6Ks last week and you're at 5.5Ks. If you can get over that line, then we'll give you a bonus. You can unlock a new bike or a new song or a new environment, right? And then if all of your progress, all of your stats, all of your kilometers, all your sweat points or something that we make, if that goes towards a team goal, right? And then you log on, you see on the website that your team is like 10Ks behind and it's towards the end of the month, and the team at the end of the month gets a bonus track or something like that, or that means that they get the cup for a month or whatever it is. You can add all those competitive elements into it, and now you're making positive change with that, right? And so now we can have get gamers off the couch a little bit and have that thing. I mean, you said like, oh my god, I could waste so much time in this. And it's like, well, it's not wasted if it's fitness, right?
Like it's you can definitely be in there for a long time and not realize that you're doing something that isn't just sitting down.
Yeah. So at South by Southwest, there was a moment where there was not really anybody sort of milling around the booth, and there was one guy pedaling away. So we just didn't tell him that the game was endless and unlimited, and we let him keep going. And about 12 minutes in, he kind of politely was like, does this have an end? And we were like, alrighty. Then like we helped him out of the headset from there, and it was like, now we know around about how long someone will play for if unprompted, right?
Yeah.
And they're at a convention and they don't want to get too sweaty, and like there's all these other factors, right? So that was sort of that aspect of it is like, can we make this so engaging that you do lose track of time a little bit?
It's because you could just kind of almost not zone out, but you could kind of just get into that groove and
and that's sort of the idea behind it, right? Like, I mean, we've heard of the Tetris effect, where you just sort of you kind of get into the zone, right? And you're just thinking about the next block, and you just going. So I've added all of these things into the game that are subtly trying to do that, right? So the music actually gets better the faster you go. So there's multiple layers to the music, and as you build up speed, then the layers of the music will kind of come in.
Yeah, right.
And then if you hit a car or something, those layers drop back down again in volume. So then it makes you go, oh, I got to pedal faster to get all that back. Yeah. And as the music builds back up again, now you're back in the groove. That gets you to like sort of
a flow state,
stay in it and really want to like stay in that area. And it makes you then want to go fast, and also like up your skill in dodging the cars and everything like that. So added all these little features in just to try to maximize that in the zone feeling for as long as possible. And I feel like that's going to be the key to like get people to be like, oh, actually, this is going to help me. This is a game that I can play For ours, it's a justification to, to grab a bike or maybe dig it out of the shed. And that aspect of it then can create a positive change. And then it's guilt-free gaming, right? You can get your exercise and gaming at the same time. So
have you used the Apple Vision Pro yet?
Mm-mm.
You haven't used it?
I'm not sure if there's any in the state.
Are they released yet, or is it?
You can't buy them in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah. They I talked to Apple when we were in Melbourne last year, and they are I know there's one in Singapore, and they're trying to get a trying center here in Sydney. I think there's going to be one in Sydney. That you can try it, and that was for developers to try it out a little bit early. Now that it's on sale, who knows?
Are you going to get one?
No. No, I can't.
Big investment.
I can't afford that. No,
it's a big investment to be like the test subject of a first generation thing.
It's for early adopters. It's for.
And I was watching this. Marquez Brownlee. Marquez.
Yeah.
He made a really good point that Apple never released things with Pro in front of it immediately. So obviously they have plans to release a cheaper pair.
Yeah.
Maybe without that stupid eye thing they got going on out the front, like
because
I think that's an OLED screen. That would not be fucking cheap.
No, the whole thing isn't cheap.
Yeah, and but they can't do it for $5,000. If they dropped it to maybe, if it was 2,000 to 2,500 Australian, I would consider getting them.
Yeah,
because I think that's gonna, because it's an Apple product, that'll if something's gonna push VR and AR into the more mainstream light, it will be an Apple product because people love Apple.
Yeah, for sure. And that's sort of the thing, right? Like, I mean, I had a better smartwatch than the Apple Watch for 10 years, right? Before the Apple Watch came out, right? And then the Apple Watch 1 comes out and you go, oh, cool. It has 4 apps and it can sort of do something, right?
Well, the Android watches are still better.
Yeah, right? And then, it was years later that then the Apple Watch then has more features than what some of the other smartwatches had, right? So that's sort of the life cycle we're looking at, right? Or I was looking up the other night that there was an LG phone that released a month before the iPhone. It had a better camera, had a flash, had a couple of other features that the iPhone never did. iPhone comes out.
Bang.
And then now it's a pre-iPhone, post-iPhone thing, right?
Yeah.
So VR's been around for over 10 years now. The original DK3 is like 2013. The Vive came out 2015. And then, we've had things like virtual desktop since 2016, right? So that means you can be in your headset and you can take your computer, put it in front of you, and you've got your windows and you can do spatial computing, right? We've had that since 2015, 2016. And then we've had hand tracking since 2019. On the Quest 1.
See, the hand tracking was actually really responsive on that.
It's improved a lot since 2019 for sure, right? But like these are things that we've had. Meta have gone for very much like, let's get the hardware as cheap as possible to get it out to as many people as possible, right? They're trying to go for that adoption. Meta are losing money on every headset they sell, right? They're losing money on it. Very similar to the console market is, they'll try to get the PlayStation 5 out for as cheap as possible, and they'll make the money up on games that they sell because they control that market, right? Very similar with the Quest. So it's their marketplace. They take a piece of every item on the store sold. Very similar to Apple and Google on the phone markets.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the strategy. But Meta have invested billions of dollars into this, and they're losing money every year. This was their best quarter ever for
by Meta. You're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, isn't
Mark
it?
Zuckerberg, yeah. So they bought Oculus. They've killed the name now. It's all Meta Reality Labs now. Meta Reality Labs had their best quarter ever in their development this year, and they still lost $4 billion. That's how much money that Mark is pumping into the market.
I wonder why he's putting that.
He's trying to 5-head it down the line.
Well,
right?
That's the thing. You need someone like that to be willing to lose $10 billion just to fucking kickstart something like that.
Yeah, and it's good and bad, right? He's distorted the market. He's made it in a way where people have these high expectations, but it doesn't really match what people are actually willing to spend or what people are willing to do in there, right? Apple coming in and doing this now is actually really good. Like, people are going to turn around and pretend that Apple invented this and invented that or whatever, but that doesn't matter. What Apple has done is they've given everybody something to shoot for, right? They've released a headset that's got amazing cameras, amazing screens, and this new lens technology and everything that's all just come into that. Like, we're aware of it, but it's all very expensive, right? So the Quest 3 has LCD screens in there, and that's specifically because the screens are cheap and they're bright and they can do all the things that we need to do. In order for something like the Vision Pro to work, and for whatever the next generation of that is, the screens are actually only this big. They're 4K and they're like 1.5 inches each, right? So think about how complicated it is to make that.
Yeah.
And no one's doing that yet. There's a few companies around that are like starting to work this out, starting to do it. Samsung and all that are all buying up companies that are making screens that are this small with 4K, right? And then you've got to use the lenses, the lens technology that Meta has developed and everything over the last few years. Now can make that then cover your whole field of view. Problem is the lenses aren't very efficient. So we're talking like you've got to make a screen that's 10 times brighter than your TV in order to get that 10% of light all the way into the headset.
Yeah.
So that's the technological problems that are happening right now with VR. So sort of Apple has chucked this, they've raised the bar and literally went, okay, industry, it's your time to catch up now. And that's sort of the thing is they create a product that then creates demand for that technology. That means the technology gets developed, and then with every screen that they make, it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So that's sort of the biggest impact that I think Apple are going to have in the industry.
Make everyone raise their game.
Is to push the technology forward because there's demand for it now. And that's sort of the thing is shining that light on it, getting that mainstream appeal.
VR's never been talked about more from a mainstream for people that would never even say the word VR.
Yeah.
More than the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And it's made me want, it's honestly made me want, not an Apple Vision Pro, but even like a Quest or something. It's made me want one because like, why the fuck don't I have a VR set?
Yeah. And
it feels like something I should have.
Yeah, right. And that's what that is the Apple effect, right? And you'll be able to go into an Apple store soon and try it and you'll be like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't afford this, right? and whatever. But the cool thing is that it's also showing off all this display technology, right? So it's going to be the best screen you've ever looked at because of the type of tech that's in there. It's going to be better than your TV. It's going to be 3D. It's going to be HDR. It's going to be pure OLED. So the blacks are just going to like the screen can just basically turn off and you're in pure darkness and things like that. So there are all these awesome aspects of it. But now it's like, okay, cool. Now the supply chain needs to catch up. They need to work on they got to work on certain technical aspects of these screens and get them cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And then boom, like now the headsets and all that can be cheap enough that everybody can have them and they can try out all this new stuff, right? So it's a huge technological boom. But of course, Apple have had to sort of do it in a way where they look like they're innovating. They're coming up with new terms and things like that to really make it an Apple thing. The issue being, though, is that there's not going to be a focus on gaming for quite a while.
Apple's more for spatial, like work and
Spatial
spatial computing.
There are a few games
shit.
and stuff for it so far, but there's not going to be a lot of that.
Because they'll have to be Apple exclusive, and not a lot of big developers probably want to be Apple exclusive.
And there's no controller. Right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so like hand tracking is going to only get you so far. There's some great hand tracking games on
no
Quest.
Haptics, nothing though. It's just apparently though with like because they're big things like obviously the pinching to do it, you get that little haptic feedback from your own finger.
Yeah,
but that's not going to work for a game.
It doesn't work for it doesn't work for the keyboard.
Oh fuck! And that looks horrible. The keyboard looks like it would be terrible to navigate.
Yeah.
But apparently the eye tracking on it is phenomenal.
Yeah. But then you're going to be typing with your eyes, right? You're going to be doing this.
Yeah, I was watching. Apparently, you do really have to get used to having to look at something, and then because you can't kind of work on two things at once because you can only look somewhere. And that takes a bit to get used to.
So eye tracking's been something we've wanted in VR for a while, and there have been a select headsets that have had it, and then it's because there's been technology that we've been waiting to be able to implement into headsets, right? So the PlayStation VR 2 has it, has eye tracking, but what it allows it to do is, and the Vision Pro does this as well, where only the area where you're looking is in focus. So they can actually drop the rendering quality of everything else that you're not looking at.
That's smart.
Which means you can then make better games for it because you don't have to render everything in full quality.
Well, it's more realistic because it's when add your peripherals, it's not as obviously. So it's Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah. So when you're playing Horizon Forbidden West or whatever it is on the PlayStation VR 2, they use foveated rendering to then save more performance on the PlayStation, so that then you know everything's at a higher frame rate and everything like that, because you got to push 90 hertz. You got to push 90 frames per second for VR, otherwise people will start to get sick. So there's a lot of PlayStation games where they struggle to stay at 60. But now we're talking 90 is the minimum, right? Or 72 is the minimum, right? So that's a lot of performance that these computers will have to do in order to do really nice games in VR. So they're using the eye tracking to then lower the quality of everything you're not looking at, so that you can save a little bit of CPU and GPU performance to make sure everything runs smoothly. That's been one of the main use cases for eye tracking in the VR industry. That's what has been the main thing, but it's just expensive. You need IR lights and IR cameras on the inside of the headset in order to track your eyes and things like that. So a lot of headsets just they don't involve it unless it's an enterprise headset. And but now Apple's basically made that normalized. We're gonna have to start getting
How far do you think it is in the future from
here we go.
VR being almost indistinguishable
from reality?
Yes.
Whoa.
Realistically, but you got to. It's very hard to say, because 3 years ago no one knew about ChatGPT, and have a look how much that's changed the world in a year and a half.
Yeah, so it is interesting, right? It is interesting, but industry like tech comes in leaps and bounds, right? So 2014 was a huge leap, because we're like, oh my god, this VR thing is really cool, right? And then the Vive comes out like 2 years later, and they've invented, and they did this in like 8 months. They invented a system that, you know, uses lasers to track around the room, and you can do full room scale VR. You've got controllers that are tracked in real space and everything. Everybody then just expected that every 2 years we were going to get this massive leap, right? But it's not, and it's the same thing. Like, how much has a phone changed in the last like 6 years?
I've been paying for the same phone for 8 years.
Right.
With a slightly better camera.
Yeah, slightly better camera, slightly better screen, better battery, no headphone jack or like whatever.
My iPhone 5 was still the best iPhone I've ever had.
Yeah, and so it's incremental, and then something will happen, and then there'll be another leap, and then it'll be incremental, then it'll be another leap, right? So Apple are the first ones to put relatively decent cameras on the headsets, outside of anything that's like, you know, military grade or anything like that we haven't tried. There are headsets that other manufacturers have been making that have multiple screens. So they have a really high resolution screen, and then a less high resolution screen that sort of matches your eyes, and that's supposed to be like retina level. Like, you're supposed to not really be able to tell the difference, right? For pass through, camera technology would need to come a lot further. That's very difficult to do, is to sort of replicate reality through a camera projected onto a screen in real time.
When you say pass through, that's the camera on the outside.
Yeah.
See, apparently the iPhone Vision Pros is insane.
Yeah, but that's why they put a desktop. That's why they put a MacBook chip in it.
Yeah, it has
two massive chips in it.
12 millisecond latency or something. So you can it's almost indistinguishable.
That's why it's so expensive.
But that's why it costs 6,000 Australian.
You need to process that. You have to process that 12 megapixels.
Yeah.
Then you gotta warp it. You gotta distort it. You gotta correct it. Then you gotta put a projector onto the screen at 90 frames per second.
See, if they didn't spend as much money on that, and they spent more money on the ergonomics of it, and cheapened it a bit, it'd be better.
It's Apple.
Yeah.
It needed to make a huge impact. It needed to look really good.
Polarizing.
It needed to look cool. People needed to be like, oh, I want this, right? Like, it's like Beats. Like, they were never the best headphones, but they looked cool.
Yeah.
And cool people wore them. Kids wanted Beats.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. So for sure, like, Apple are the ones that have put the money into it to show what we could do in 5 years, right? I'd say it'd take 3 to 5 years for the tech to come down enough for anybody to be able to buy one and have the same features that the Pro has now, right? In terms of like indistinguishable, we've already got like the screens are around about the level now where you struggle to see individual pixels, So we, like, screen door effect is gone. That was older headsets. You would sort of see the gaps between pixels, and it kind of looked like you were looking through a screen door.
That's what that means. I was wondering what that meant.
And then now the pixels and everything are all nice enough that you can't tell.
Coming out of that game, the first one you showed me, the little
first
aliens,
encounters, yeah.
That even coming out of that, which is obviously a game, like it's not. The graphics aren't made to look real.
Yeah.
Like it's stylized a bit.
Yeah.
Coming out of that, and when it's mixed in with my shed, because you said it was mixed reality.
Mixed reality. So yeah, you can see the world around you through the cameras, but then they add stuff to it.
Like I could shoot my shed and a hole would come out of my shed and there would be like an alien world on the outside of it, and these aliens were popping in. And taking off the headset after that, it's like, oh, this is bland. It's weird. It's a weird feeling.
And the cameras aren't even that good on the Quest 3, really. They get very grainy. They do need a lot of light.
In this is a very poor lighting scenario. I imagine it would look better in better light.
For sure.
But you can tell there is room for improvement in that, but it's still serviceable.
Yeah, and we're hearing similar stuff from the Apple Vision Pro as well, saying that, it can get grainy in low light. And stuff like that. And that's all just to do with camera technology, right? And so all the camera manufacturers are already working on getting like the dynamic shutter speed and things like that, being able to do dynamic irises for exposure and things like that, and getting those exposure times down. Higher ISO with less noise reduction and stuff like that is very computationally hard. But as the chips get better, they're going to be able to do that. So it's going to get better and better. There's a few companies we're waiting to see what they're going to do next, especially Valve. We have no idea what they're doing next. We have some idea.
Game-wise or technology-wise?
Headset-wise.
Do Valve, what's theirs called?
So they work, the HTC Vive is actually Valve technology.
Is it?
Yeah, so they started it.
Really?
They invented the Lighthouse. They did all of that. Then they were looking for help with manufacturing.
Valve are the creators of Steam.
Yeah, Half-Life, Alex.
And Half-Life.
Half-Life, yeah. So they invented the Lighthouse. The whole tracking system and everything. They did all of that, and then manufacturing went to HTC.
Fuck, what a grind that company's on.
Yeah, but they did that in like 8 months.
Yeah, right.
Like, it was an insane, just like, let's do it. And the initial version of it, they actually had to put like physical QR codes all over the walls so that the headset could then map the space. And it looked crazy. You look like a crazy person if you had like QR codes all over your walls. But then they invented a tracking system where it was markerless and everything. It was crazy. And they were just going to tech shows and showing people in like a back hotel room, and people coming out of there going, oh my God, this is the future. Quick.
Yeah.
Give me $1 million or like whatever, right? So it's nuts. So they worked with HTC on that. But of course, Steam, in a similar way, like they wanted to make money off the software. So they wanted to get the production costs of the headset down as low as possible so people would buy them and then be able to buy games on Steam. Issue being HTC were like, yeah, but it costs this much. We need to make money off it, whatever. So Valve were like, okay, fine. You take it. You do the Vive. And then they released their own version called the Index, which was slightly better cameras, better controllers. We've got controllers that wrap around your hand. So it's got individual finger tracking as well. So you can make gestures and stuff. And then it's got thumbsticks on top. So it's like a proper controller. And it's really, really cool. And because it wraps around your hand with a strap, you can let go. So you don't have to hold the controller all the time. But it also means when you throw, you can let go of it. So it feels like much more like a natural throwing motion. It's really good.
See, that's what the one thing for me that will change VR completely is once they nail how to get perfect haptic feedback and retention. Like, I mean, just like tension on grabbing things, or if someone grabs your hand, like just not being able to just go like that. I feel like just little things like that do take out the experience at the moment.
Oh yeah.
But like you said before, people are working on all of these
things.
There's
all of these lovely, and this is sort of why I got into VR in the first place. You did ask me that earlier. It was that kind of that feeling, right? Like very similar to the indie games market. It was that like this is brand new and nobody knows what to do with it, right? The DK1 came out and we played Left 4 Dead in it, and I was like, this is really cool, but like I don't want to be sitting here with a controller. I want to be standing up. I want to be moving around. Like we've got this headset where you can look wherever you want, right? And even then we were playing with these handheld controllers, but they sort of, they were attached to a cable and they could only be a certain distance apart and things like that. Then the Vive came out in 2015 and that blew me away, right? So you've got 5.5 meters squared to just run around inside a video game with controllers that you can put anywhere and aim guns and do all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is insane. But every kind of VR game will just give you this tiny taste of the future, right? There was these games that you would play and like this one awesome thing would happen. You're like, oh my God. And then the magic's gone. And then you have to play like another 4 games to get another little bit of magic, right? All these little things would all just come together. And because they were all indie games and no big companies were sort of stepping in to show the way, I was like, this is a gold rush. Like, we got to get in this now. We got to learn what this is because, you're now part of the very, very small group of people that have tried everything. And now you're like, well, but what else can we do? Or what happens if you do this? Or what happens if you do that, right? So I took a HTC Vive and I attached, I just duct taped hockey sticks, broken like ice hockey sticks to the controllers and made a bow and arrow. And now and I put a little bit of elastic on everything. Now I've got a bow and arrow and I'm running around my bedroom just like shooting arrows, holding this thing up. Feels amazing, right? Yeah. And then the next day, my whole arm was sore. I could barely open doors because of my muscles because I've been holding this thing up. And it wasn't super heavy, but it's a lot heavier than a controller, right? And that just like triggered something. And I'm like, oh my God, like if we could find a way to work out while playing video games, like it's the dream, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm playing shooter games and I'm holding up this, heavy controller and I'm crouched down and I'm moving around and the next day my thighs are really sore and everything. I'm like, this is absolutely the dream, right? Like then I'm like, I'm not just wasting time playing video games, I'm exercising, right? And then I'm like, okay, cool. What else can we do? How can we do this? How can we do that?
I need to develop a game.
Right? And so it started with experiments. It started with modifications. Yeah. It started with trying all these things. But then I went, the problem is that, not many people have a bedroom big enough to do this, right? And people are trying crappy mobile phone VR and going, oh, I don't like VR. And I'm like, well, no, but it can be really awesome. You just need space and you need a computer and you need these sensors and you need these controllers and maybe you need this, maybe you need that. And I went, no, I got to find a way to bring all of that experience down into the smallest space possible. And then I want the world to feel big. I want people to feel like they've traveled and they've moved around the space. I'm like, how can I condense that? And I went, freaking exercise bike. Right? Like if I can condense a VR game down into the size of an exercise bike and you're on it and you can travel. I mean, imagine if you could cycle from one end of Skyrim to the other, right?
Oh, it'd be sick.
Right? And that was sort of the inspiration for the game is that like,
good.
But because then everybody's got space for an exercise bike in their room. It's nice and contained. But
fits
then also
in an apartment.
Yeah, and then like if you've got the kid, if you want to show a kid VR or something like that, they're going to run into the walls or kick the cat or something, because they get so into it that they can't contain themselves. And I'm like, well, if it's an exercise bike, you're hanging on.
They have to be there.
You're not moving around. You're not going to do anything, right? So that was sort of the inspiration of it. And
it's a great introduction into VR.
That too, right? So we've showed hundreds of people VR now, and in South by Southwest, we got given a booth. And we were right at the front, so everybody would come and see us first. And then I'd ask people, I'm like, have you done VR before? And they're like, no. And I went, actually, like, it's totally fine. We've had basically no one get motion sickness playing my game, which you would think it would. Like when VR first came out, people were like, no, you can't go this fast, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. You'll make people sick. And the hack is that once you're on that exercise bike, your whole body's involved and you're expecting the movement, and so you don't get sick.
Yeah, it's VR, a natural movement.
Yeah, in VR you get sick if your digital body moves and your real body doesn't, and there's sort of that disconnect, right? Yeah. So you got to develop games in a way that ease people into the experience, and then once you've done a few sessions, you can sort of try different games each time, and then you build up a kind of a feel for it, and then we call them VR legs, kind of like your sea legs. And then you don't get motion sickness anymore. But sort of, I've managed to like completely bypass that entire gap, and I can put people in day one, and they'll within minutes they're playing my game, going like 100 kilometers down a highway, dodging cars, and they're an absolute pro. and no motion sickness whatsoever.
I didn't experience
their
any.
stomach goes a little bit. This one guy in Sydney, he was like, "How did you get the bike to move when I go up the ramp?" And he's like, "It's amazing." And I went, "Close your eyes on the next ramp." And he goes over the ramp and he closes his eyes and he went, "Oh, the bike doesn't move at all." He thought I'd literally moved the bike.
It's true though, because your gut goes up and down, you do get like a sensation of the bike actually moving.
Yeah, on Friday we put some professional hockey players in my game, and they were like, "Whoa, they're hanging on for dear life."
Yeah,
But,
it can be like at first it is like, oh, I'm actually going to fall off because you do lean a bit.
yeah. So it's been mind the pun, but it's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
So from 2015 to now, like I've just been sort of all of that, and I've just been drinking in all the new experiences and everything that's coming out, and the development of this brand new tech medium, right? Like we had no idea what it's going to turn into, or even how to do it, right? Like with regular flat games, have been around long enough that you sort of know, like there's different genres of games, and you can do this, and this works, and this isn't very good, or whatever. But when VR came out, it was brand new, and you could do anything, and it was just so fresh and new that it was like, I got to get into this.
So say fast forward like 50 years and say they've worked out every kink.
Yeah.
And it's like indistinguishable from an old, like any game you could choose to jump into VR wise.
Any video game ever?
Previous, your favorite video game, any experience that you can have in VR, but it be indistinguishable. We're talking smell.
Wow.
Like it's Ready Player One type shit.
Yeah, right.
It was it's work. They figured it out. Any game.
The funny thing is, you might not have to wait that long. There's a mod just came out recently that can turn almost any Unreal Engine 4 or 5 game into VR like that.
Really?
Yeah. So it's called the Universal Unreal mod, and it literally because most video games are made in Unreal Engine right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Or any AAA any AAA
Even
game.
indie games now. Even indie games are made in Unreal
such a
Engine.
user friendly.
Right? It's Unreal or Unity basically, right? And because Epic have funded the engine and they've made all of this development, it's so much easier to just jump in, and they've got all of these tools for you. It's incredible, right? But there's a mod out there now because Unreal Engine is so ubiquitous, and because everybody knows how to program inside of Unreal Engine. This guy's made a mod. You can basically boot up any Unreal Engine game, boot up the mod, and it's instantly VR. And you can mess around with it. You can play third-person games in first person. You can play first-person games in third person. So now I got to ask you the same question. What current video game?
Last of Us.
The Last of Us? That's Naughty Dog. I'm not sure if that's Unreal Engine, but
God of War?
God of War. I'm not sure either, actually.
I think that would be terrible in VR, actually.
The new one?
Yeah, it'd be scary as fucking... That'd be too hectic.
In third person, it would be very cool.
How would you do with VR in third?
You just sort of like a float, just like the camera.
You'd just be the camera.
Yeah.
See, that is such a good application for VR.
There are some games out there already that are really cool that are like that. There's a few platformers. There's one that I love, and it's called Moss. And like everything's sort of like a bit of a diorama, and there's this tiny little mouse character that you control. It's like a little Zelda game, but this is a little mouse. But you're sort of like a deity in the game, and you can move objects around to solve puzzles, and then the little mouse jumps over it.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous, and it's just incredible because it's this tiny little mouse, and everything feels so miniaturized. It's great. And then you've got other games where you're a giant, and then there's a tiny world and all this. It's very cool. But those types of games are actually quite fun in VR, is because you're just surrounded by it, right?
Yeah, right.
So they don't all have to be first person experiences for you to get that fun and
would
depth
it be
out
that
of it.
hard to? Would it be that hard to make third person VR games, but like AAA style, like a God of War game? It wouldn't be that hard.
No, it's
would
basically exactly the same.
because you just have to make yourself the camera and the ability to like turn around and see. But you actually, that would probably be the hard part, being able to render. Oh, actually, games now just render in whole fucking things anyway.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And with Unreal Engine, the way it is, it's doing all of the background processes and stuff like all by itself, right? It's dynamically changing the quality of anything you're not looking at in order to maximize the performance of what you are looking at. Yeah. So you asked me a question about any video game ever.
Yeah.
There's so many. There's so many ideas, right? There's so many things. I mean, I'm an old school gamer. I love stuff like Super Metroid and things like that. Like I grew up with a Nintendo. But what game would I want to play again in VR?
That's a hard one.
Yeah, well, even then, I was like, just the other day, I was going through the list of Unreal Engine games because I'm like, well, there's got to be something amazing that like I'd love to play again and everything. So it's a whole thing. But that's where we're at now. We can basically do that.
What's Grand Theft Auto 5?
That wouldn't be Unreal Engine.
It's not Unreal.
So a lot of
is
those
it?
big AAA games, they make their own
They
engines,
make their own
right?
engines.
And they've been propping up the same engines. But yeah, I think there is a VR mod for Grand Theft Auto.
I've seen people play Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah,
in VR.
I've played Cyberpunk in VR, and it's very
Really?
cool. Yeah.
How?
Well, my computer nearly melted.
Full
But
game?
yeah, it's just a mod.
Did your computer survive?
Yeah, mostly.
Because I've heard they have made that game look insane now.
It's crazy. Yeah, it is really, really good, and like just all the ray tracing and everything.
How
like
do they
that.
do that? Like, so you can just play the full game in VR on a controller, on a keyboard.
On a controller, though, yeah. So with this Universal Unreal mod, some of them you can do some very basic motion controls. Some of them you
Was
can
that
just
one
do.
in first person or 3?
It's first person, yeah.
That's cool.
But again, all you're doing is modifying the camera. Just a piece of code that's controlling the camera. You just change it from a mouse to the headset direction. It's very, very easy to do.
I'm just thinking world-wise, what would be excellent to like jump into?
Just inhabit, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've actually,
So like Elden Ring, obviously that's not Unreal, but if some people,
I think the next one is.
Is it
I think the next one is going to be developed in Unreal.
really?
Yeah.
It's just easier.
Yeah.
It's all there.
And that's what's crazy. Like you were saying before the podcast is about like how do you get into game development, right? And I said, well, I mean, how did you get into podcasting? How did you learn about cameras and switching and Zoom? I mean, you're doing the work of 3 people right now.
Yeah.
You're hosting, you're monitoring audio, you're switching.
Yeah.
I mean, I do this for sports as well, so I know what's going on in your brain right now.
On the podcast, I don't drink. It's a lot easier. The ones I drink, you'll see the camera. I'll be talking for 10 minutes, and the camera will be on that guest.
Yeah.
Just
But
very much
and that's
up.
the thing. But you just found out all this stuff. I'm assuming just on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just like tutorials and just
ChatGPT. When I found about ChatGPT, I was sitting with Anthony Robinson. And I didn't know about ChatGPT, and he's like, "Did you hear about this?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean? It just talks to you like Google?" And he's like, "No. Like, it just tells you. Like, it will just tell you what." And I had all these audio issues, and I just typed in what gear I was using, and ChatGPT was like, "This is what you do."
Yeah.
And it's just lifesaver.
It's read every gear forum, every question ever, right?
Lifesaver.
Yeah. So it's the same thing, but just faster, right? But exactly the same with game development. Like we said, pretty much Unreal Engine just has all of the tools that you need, right? Unity is very similar. A lot of VR games are made in Unity because it just has a very good, like I was saying before, open XR system, which just means it works with every headset out off the bat, and it's very easy to just get in there and start developing, right? Unreal Engine now even has you don't even have to code. You just have these blocks of logic that you just put in, and same thing.
Yeah, I was looking it up, and that logic, that it's like that kind of networking web thing you build. Yeah,
they're called blueprints, and you're just adding bits and pieces in there. Like if this happens, do that. If this doesn't happen, do that.
Why
if
don't
this
they
thing's
teach this shit in school?
They do now.
They do.
They do.
I was gonna
It wasn't a thing.
just drop home ec.
Yeah.
Like your parents should teach you how to fucking cook. Like just no one cares. If your mum and dad or someone doesn't teach you how to cook, it's not the teacher's job. Teach coding.
Yeah. No, they do now, and there are a lot of programs that are like that, and it's really good. But that's the thing is just like there's so much stuff you can just learn on the internet now. ChatGPT is great at teaching coding and stuff like that. It's pretty much what it was invented for.
ChatGPT can be used for evil or very or good. Like it just depends. But I smash ChatGPT for so many things.
Yeah. But that's the thing. So it's really good for all that stuff, and you can just straight up learn everything you need to learn on the internet.
Yeah.
There are so many tutorials and stuff out there because so many people are now using the same engines. They're using the same tools. 99% of the time, they've already encountered a problem that you're trying to solve. The solution is just there. So easy to do. So that's kind of the really inspiring thing about video game development right now, and especially in Australia. Like I said, we're very lucky that we're sort of a rich country, but we have a very low population. Like our education is pretty good, so you can just learn everything online, right? And so there are a lot of tools out there. There's a couple of things I want to shout out. Is that there's a really amazing video game dev streamer on Twitch, Pirate Software. Amazing. He's been blowing up on YouTube with all of his shorts and everything like that. But he's made a website called develop.games, and it's just basically just an absolute top list of resources for getting into game development, getting into like learning how to code, learning what engine you should use and all this kind of stuff. It's just like absolutely just, you know, check the boxes, go through, and all of the amazing resources are just there, right? And then what's cool, especially in Adelaide, is that we have, you know, Facebook groups and things like that where we can, you know, you can meet other game developers and learn from them and start up small teams, right? So we have the Adelaide game developers on Facebook and Discord. Used to be called ARG, but it's just Adelaide Game Dev now. It's way easier, right? We have a VR meetup that I help run, where we meet up about once a month and we talk about VR development and things like that. But like those resources just make it so easy just to get into it, and you can ask people questions and you can learn, you can meet like-minded people, and it's really easy to get into, especially like a lot of, you know, like there are a lot of the kinds of gamer kids and things like that. Maybe their social skills aren't amazing, or, you know, they don't have a lot of friends or things like that. Like game development is a way for you to sort of improve yourself, as well as like doing something productive and doing something that you love, right? And so, you know, these guys encourage that maybe you get into streaming while you're developing your game and things like that, but that can actually help you with your social skills and stuff. Thor from Pirate Software, he actually pioneered on Twitch and basically protested that they add a game development category on Twitch, which means now that you can actually click on that, you can search, and everybody in that category are making games of some sort. So you can follow along and you can see how people make games.
Yeah,
you can ask them questions. You can help them with the development, right? They'll be like, well, what do you think? Should we do it like this? You know, what power up should we add to this or whatever? And you can help people. And that way, you know, you're sort of building up fans and an audience while you're making the game. And that way, you know, you're not working by yourself. You're not stuck solo, and, you know, you're not getting any feedback or anything like that. Or you're not releasing a game and then find out it's not fun. Like, people can watch you play, people can ask you questions about it, and you can make it better as you go.
Yeah, right.
So that's like just amazing, right? All these things I would have loved to have if I was a kid, right? And like, sure, the internet can be a dark place sometimes or whatever, right? But if you're doing something positive and you're doing something that you're passionate about, it's going to attract other passionate people.
Yeah, the internet's only a dark place if you're a dark person.
Exactly, right?
Like, if you're looking up fucking hate and shit, that's what's going to pop up in your algorithm. I hear so many people, oh, my feed's always depressing, because you outsource depressing shit. You should see my YouTube.
Also, because you engage with it.
Yeah, I like my YouTube is fucking hilarious. It's just like the most brain dead shit in the world. It's orca facts and cooking videos. There's no. I wouldn't even have known there was a war in Syria unless I'd watched the news, because it just doesn't come up in my feeds because I don't interact with things like that. Yeah. Like, I would be so oblivious to bad things because it's just not in my algorithm.
That's the thing. We're in the attention economy, and, you know, that preys on people that engage with
hates more
stuff like that.
Hates more, and negativity is more addictive than positivity. People just fall into this little thing where just negativity becomes so addictive that they just have to fucking hate on everything.
Well, because the platform is optimized for that.
Yeah.
Right? The
infinite scroll and shit like that.
Yeah, well, it's the attention economy, and these platforms want as much of your attention as possible. They've trained the AI on that, and the AI went, well, this person hated this video, but it meant that they'd watched every other video and they commented, and they, you know, and then that caused other people to comment. So I guess I'll give them more videos they don't like, right? And so there's all that kind of aspect of it, right? But yeah, like through things like that you're interested in and that you are passionate about, you can find all these other like-minded people, and you can build communities and audiences that way. And I feel like that's the real trigger. Like, I feel like kids nowadays are so are going to benefit from this so much if they can get those few little tips where it's like, okay, well, like I don't have to ask for permission, right? It's very similar. Like you didn't have to try and get a radio job to do a podcast, right? I think that's like we're now hitting that thing where the internet is finally doing what it was designed to do, which is just ubiquitize everything. And now anybody can do something that they want to do. They don't have to ask for permission. They can just work towards something and get better and better at doing it as you go. Learn on the job. Like you don't have to go, oh, well, I don't have this degree or I don't have this, I don't have permission to go off and pursue this thing. They'll be like, no, this is something that I want to do. I would do it for free, but I should be able to do it for a living. So I'm going to pursue that. And doesn't matter if I make mistakes. It doesn't matter if I'm not very good straight away. It doesn't matter if people say that it's not good, because you're doing something, it's positive, you're learning, and your next one's going to be better and your next one's going to be better. I'm stealing this completely from Thor, but he says that he shows a list of games that came out the same year as Five Nights at Freddy's. And he shows this list, and one of them is called Fart Hotel. And then you find out it's the same developer, and he made like 20 games that year, and only one of them blew up.
Really?
So the same year that Five Nights at Freddy's came out and blew up and became this amazing, massive game, and there's like 10 of them now.
That Five Nights at Freddy's lore is insane, eh?
Right? But that same year, he made a game called Fart Hotel.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, just make things.
Yeah.
And people will be like, hey, I like that thing you made, or hey, this thing you made could be a bit better if you did this. And you're like, thanks for the tip.
Well, that Fart Hotel might be someone's favourite game.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if it's one person's favourite game, then you did your job right.
All right. So I find that's like a really positive thing. Is just that there's resources out there. There's so many like things out there you can just learn on the internet. You don't need permission. You don't need to sign up for some course. You don't need a degree. You don't need to rack up debt. You can learn something. You can meet a bunch of people that all want to do the same thing. You can get together and make something awesome. Get some government funding, maybe get a little bit of a leg up or something, or just get enough people's attention on the internet to be like, bam, we made a thing, send us a bit of money and we'll make another one.
Yeah.
And that's a career.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
So before we finish, where can people, does your game have an Instagram? Does it have a website? Tell us more about Sage. Give everyone the date so it's nice and fresh before we leave.
Yeah, for sure. So it's Pedal Rebel VR on all social media.
Pedal Rebel VR,
Pedal
all one
Rebel
word,
VR.
everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, everywhere. Like I'm on Twitter and all this stuff. The website needs a bit of work. I just haven't done anything with it. And then we're going to be at Sage, which is at the SAC Studios, 16th and 17th of February. It's coming up. It's pretty exciting. But come along. It's free entry, and you'll be some of the not first people. You'll be within the first 1,000 people that have played the game before release. There's going to be a lot of other games there that are really cool that everyone's going to be, you're just going to love and check out, that are all locally from Adelaide. And then stick around on socials. I'm going to be posting more development on YouTube and all that stuff. And then eventually my game will be on App Lab, so you'll be able to download it on Quest, and you can buy a bike at home. The bike that we've been demoing our game on and taking it all around the country and everything, I got on Marketplace for $50. A lot of people are like, oh, but you have to buy the game plus an exercise bike and the headset and stuff. And I'm like, bikes are really cheap right now. Everyone's trying to get rid of them since COVID.
Yeah.
They're taking up space in the garage because nobody really sticks to exercise bike by itself. But if there was a really cool game, so that's sort of the end goal there for sure. So check us out on socials. We've got all the links there, and then more and more development. Fingers crossed I can get this game out as soon as possible. Definitely there'll be a demo out for people to try, and then just make it better and better, and
boom. All right, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
You too, man. It's been fun.
That was fun. We'll do it again.
Yeah, definitely.
When you're closer to releasing,
release,
or in like a year, we'll touch base again and see where you're at.
Yeah, perfect.
Easy, man. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Cheers.
See ya.